Hi, I'm Jennifer Hathaway, and this is the past, present, and future of science assessments in New York State. Thank you for joining me for this video workshop. I just want to say before I start, I'm still getting used to this video format. I like that it's super convenient for all of you. You can watch it whenever you have time, hit pause, fast forward if you don't want to listen to certain parts. But for me, recording this video, it's just kind of like I'm Sheldon Cooper doing an episode of Fun with Flags. I might be having fun, but I feel like no one's out there really listening right now. So I'm not going to give you a ton of background as far as my background and why I'm creating this workshop, but my resume is attached to the slideshow. If you just click on my name, you can see my resume. I don't want to make this video any longer by giving all of that detail, but feel free to reach out to me at any time, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. So my email is here, and then I believe I provided my phone number in the email that I sent to all of you for you to find your way to this slideshow. So as I continue, I'm going to go through the different links that I've shared in this slideshow, and you will have access to this slideshow throughout the next month, so you can explore those links at your leisure. And then when you're finished with this video, you're going to email me and you will share with me your 5 assessment questions, and I'll explain that at the end of the video. And then we'll have a one-on-one video meet where we'll have a chance to talk about any questions you may have, or really it's difficult in a video like this to meet your individual needs because you're not sitting in front of me. You can't tell me your background and you can't ask me questions as I go through the presentation. So the one-on-one meeting, I want to know that you understand everything I'm going through, but then if you want me to expand on something or if you have specific questions, I really look forward to those meetings because it helps me get to know you and what your needs are, and hopefully make this workshop as relevant for you as possible. So before I get started today and jump into the content, I really want to say to you, even though I'm not giving you an in-depth description of my background, I am a teacher. That I feel like it's important for you to know that. This is my 22nd year of teaching, and I've taught at all of pretty much every grade from 6 through 12, and then I've also run a science camp for ages 3 up to 6th grade. So although I have all of that experience, I don't pretend to know what your day is like. So I've never been in an elementary classroom full time as a teacher. And then obviously every school district is unique. So I want you to understand that any advice I give, I understand that what I'm suggesting is in a perfect situation potentially and may not be feasible in your district or your classroom. So when we have our video meeting, I'm hoping that if you see any kind of speed bumps or things that might get in your way of reaching the goals that you might have to prepare your students for the new assessments. I love to do that kind of work with teachers and problem solve. That's one of my favorite things to do when working with teachers to try to implement these new standards. And the other thing that I think is really important that you understand is everything that I'm telling you, I really believe. I don't like to give workshops or present information through PD sessions that I don't fully believe in or haven't tried in my classroom. So everything that I will present to you today are things that I feel like are really important and things that I've tried in my classroom with my students. All of you, if you've been teaching for a really long time, you understand that there are constantly changes in curriculum. There are changes from the state. And I feel like sometimes we become a little bit reluctant to accept those changes just because a lot of times we'll hear from New York State that things are changing, or we're going to have this new or that new, and then it either doesn't change, it's not rolled out in a way that we feel is most productive for our students. And so for me personally, it's sometimes difficult for me to embrace change or to really fully jump on board and move in a new direction, especially if I don't feel like it's what's best for my students, or if I feel that there may not be the follow through from the state. So I understand all of those feelings, and I really hope that you kind of come into the next 45 minutes with me with an open mind, and I truly want you to write down questions if you think that anything I'm saying is incorrect or you're not really understanding how it would be productive for your students, please write that down. Take notes throughout the video. I really want to address all of that with you, and I don't want this to be a waste of time. I want it to be productive. Okay, now that I've said all of that, you've already found your way to this slide, obviously, so I'm just going to jump into this slide. And everything that's underlined or has a star next to it is a link. All of these pictures are links as well. And so hopefully there are a lot of resources here for you that you can explore on your own. If that's the only thing that you get out of this workshop, that's great. I know some of you may have heard about assessments before, and some of this information may be repetitive for you, but I'm hoping that at least something on this slide is new for you and makes this next 40 minutes valuable. So I've set this up. The bottom left here is where we're going to start, and that's just a basic background in the standards. I'll explain that in a second. And then this middle box is the focus really of this workshop. And then down here on the right, this will be the focus of the part 2 of this workshop. So today we're not going to jump into these resources, but if you register for part 2, I'll be going into this information further. And then over here, we have some shared resources. That's part of video 2 as well. But feel free to, obviously, you can click on any of this. And then I'm going to be updating this. So I just finished this assessment workshop with another group of teachers, and they've shared a lot of great stuff with me. So I'm going to be adding that to this shared resources before the second part of this workshop, and then you'll all have access to that as well. I feel like the best resources I get as a teacher are when other teachers share what they have. So down here on the left, if you have a really solid background in the new standards and you've done a lot of work with those, then you may want to fast forward through this part just because it's just a basic overview of the standards. But I felt like it was really important to start this workshop this way because some of you may be new teachers, or maybe you are interested in the new assessments, but you really haven't had a workshop session on the new standards. So I want to make sure I give you that background, because a lot of what I talk about in the next 40 minutes is going to be based on some of the information that you would have gotten in a PD session just specifically focused on the structure of the standards. Okay, so this first link is just a link to the PDF of the standards from New York State. This is pre-K through 12. So it's 83 pages, which is a lot to look at, but it's really important that I feel that even if you teach 12th grade, if you teach pre-K, and if you have the time, it would be great to just kind of scan through all 83 pages, because seeing what students are expected to do at pre-K, and then, first, second, third, kind of seeing the progression of these standards can really help you grasp what your students need to understand at your grade level. When I look at some of these standards, especially some of the elementary standards, they're kind of vague, and it's somewhat difficult. Even though I have a background in science, it's kind of difficult sometimes to see where they're expecting or what they're expecting students to understand. But if you look at the grade levels ahead of that, it all kind of falls in place, and you can kind of see the structure and how the content's scaffolded, and it makes a little bit more sense as far as where they want students' understanding to go with the specific content areas. Okay, I'm going to switch to a different view of this, though. I created, so if you've never really looked at the standards before, or if you've looked at them and they seem a bit confusing to you, I created this page that breaks it down a little bit to make it a little less overwhelming. So the structure of the old standards was very different as far as when you look at the page. So the page was just, it was more a content checklist, like this orange area here. So when you're looking at these standards, this orange area, when you start reading that, that's going to feel most familiar to you. And then the rest of this page is going to seem a little bit overwhelming at first, and it's going to be all new information. As far as how it's structured. If you read it, you're going to be like, oh, yeah, I do that. But when you first glance, it can be a bit overwhelming. So up here on the top, these are kind of key ideas or major understandings that students need to be able to complete or explain, or, these are the main ideas of what students need to understand at the end of the unit. So over here we have grade level in front, and then the letter prefixes are related to the branch of science, or science, physical science, or life science. And then these are objectives or learning targets. So when I'm designing a unit, these are the items I pay attention to first to kind of get a feel for the overview of the entire page of standards. Next, this is the area that's most important when designing units and understanding the structure of the new standards. This is what's changed the most. So we have a blue, orange, and green area. On the blue side, I like to think about this as skills students need to really understand and practice the scientific method. So if students are able to complete these skills, they will have a firm understanding of the process of science. These standards teach students to think and experiment like scientists. So make claims and support those claims with evidence, and then create new ideas and find new ways to accomplish different tasks. So this is the science and engineering practices. And if you read through those, you're going to see that the same skills, those same standards loop through all of the different grade levels. So it may seem like it's a lot when you add it into all the other standards on the page. However, these same standards are going to be repeated on different pages at the same grade level. The orange area is just your content checklist. So these are the items, the things that you need to teach, the content, the vocabulary. This is what students need to know. And then on the cross-cutting concepts, this green area, these concepts teach students how to analyze data, share data with peers, and apply knowledge to new situations. Now, when you read these standards, it's not going to seem like that. So it's going to say things like patterns, cause and effect, similarities and differences. So you're teaching students to be analytical thinkers. And in order to reach the skill level in science that students are, the goal for students, in the high school level, in order to be able to reach those goals, we need to start in the early elementary level with helping students find patterns and see cause and effect. And all of these cross-cutting concepts are skills that you're going to practice in other subject areas, but when weaved into science as well, it's going to help students be able to analyze data. Underneath these the three colored areas, a lot of teachers kind of ignore this because it's really fine print and it doesn't seem like it's important. And when I first started looking at these standards, this was not something I focused on either. However, if you're able to take the time to really look at these sections on the bottom, it can really be valuable when you're looking at unit planning and trying to decide how to fit science in at the elementary level, or if you're planning PBL projects at the middle school level, this is an area that's going to be super helpful. And at the high school level, if you're really wanting to pull in some real world experiences or have students do some internships or PBL, these are areas that you would want to focus on. So these right here in the middle, this is connections to similar standards at other grade levels. So I love looking at this when planning school-wide STEM days. So right now I'm planning a third grade STEM day with one of the elementary schools in our area, and I'm creating a whole bunch of stations. Now, with those hands-on stations, it's possible that, let's say at your school, you wanted first grade and third grade to do a day together. If you look right here, you can find some of the standards that are crossing for those grade levels, and then you can plan hands-on activities that would be relevant for both grade levels. So you can decrease prep time because teachers now can plan those hands-on activities together. And then your takeaways in your classroom obviously are going to be at a bit different level, but it allows you to do some cross-planning with different grade levels. On the very bottom here, we have connections to Common Core ELA and math standards. So I know that a lot of elementary and middle schools especially are trying to find those connections to ELA and math since COVID to really build those skills. So if you're trying to build those skills, but we don't want to forget about science, trying to weave those together, this is a great place to look to do that because the work's done for you. They're already showing you those connections to ELA and math. Okay, so I'm going to X that out. All right, the next thing I want to share with you is the New York State Science Updates page. So if you're wondering what's new in science, there's a lot, I'm assuming, that's going to be posted in the next year as the new assessments get closer. So every fall, New York State on this website posts an update. It's a slideshow, and any information that's new, anything that's really need to know for that school year will be posted on this page. And then you can see there's a lot of links over here. They've done a lot of work to this website in the last 5 years. It's a lot more organized now. There's much more here for parents and teachers. So this is definitely a place that you should go to get updates from the state and then some helpful resources. So there's lots of links over here, and you can see there is one that says science assessments, which is exciting. When I saw the tab, I thought maybe they would have some test questions or some samples or more information about what to expect with the new assessments, and we're not there yet. So there is the link here, but it's all information on this school year or past. So we don't have anything about what the future is going to look like quite yet. I will share with you what I've learned at state level PD sessions. But as far as you being able to access it, it's nothing yet, but I'm expecting that this coming school year, you're going to see a lot more in this assessment tab. So keep checking back there for updates. Okay. The new test timeline, this is very relevant for all of you right now. So this is the latest update. It's changed a couple times due to COVID, but you can see that in June of 2023, so that's next June, it's going to be a no test year for grade 4. And because the new test is going to be in grade 5. So next year there's going to be no test for grade 4. And then in the spring of 2024, there's going to be the first administration of the new elementary grade 5 and intermediate grade 8 science test. So 2024 is kind of the goal for when we want students to be prepared for those new tests. The other thing that I'm often asked about is the practical piece or the hands-on portions of that assessment. So at the 4th grade level, students have a hands-on portion of the test that they need to complete at many grade levels, not just 4th grade. But with the new test, I'm expecting it to be computer-based, much like all of the other tests that have been released recently. And I don't know what the performance piece is going to look like for sure. This is the last update that I have, but it's not super recent. So I have another conference that I'm attending in May, and we always have state representatives at that May conference. So I'm hoping to ask some of these questions that I have, or maybe the answers will be provided. But from what I know, the performance piece will no longer be administered during the specific window prior to the written assessment. And instead, there will be hands-on investigations, labs, that will be released at the beginning of the school year. And then you'll complete those with your class throughout the school year, much like at the high school level. High school students have to complete 1,200 minutes worth of labs throughout the school year. And then those lab credits count toward being able to sit and take the Regents exam. So it's going to be similar to that, where you'll complete those hands-on pieces and then make sure that they're completed before students take the computer version or the written part of the test. So teachers have asked me, okay, when are these going to be released? What about supplies? What about money for supplies? I know that's really stressful, and I'm hoping to have answers for you soon. For the high school, the first year, I remember it was my first year of teaching, I think, second maybe, I don't know, when these new labs came out for biology, they were released in September and students had to complete them by the following June. So we really didn't have much lead time, and finding supplies was something we had to kind of scramble and get quickly. So I'm hoping that doesn't happen this time and you can plan ahead, but I don't have any answers for you with those questions yet. Those are just questions teachers ask me frequently, so I want to make sure I answer those for you. All right. The next thing that I have for you, this is just something that an elementary teacher from Lake Placid completed for me, so I like to share it. If you are at the elementary level and you are a science coordinator, or even if you would like to kind of help with implementation of the standards in your building, this is a chart that kind of gives an overview of those standards. So instead of that 83-page document, all of the standards are kind of listed, each grade level's on one page. So this makes it easy. This would be a great handout to give to elementary teachers, so that obviously you're going to delve deeper into your own grade level standards. But if you want to kind of get an overview of what other grade levels are doing, this is a great resource to look at it quickly and get a general idea. Okay, I don't want to spend too much time on this because I need to get to the more in-depth assessment piece. The last thing that I want to share with you, though, is three-dimensional learning. So when these new assessments are created, they are going to focus on three-dimensional learning. And this is the biggest shift in instructional practices for teachers with the new standards, is they want teachers to focus on this idea of three dimensions. And it sounds complicated, but really all it means is that when you're teaching science, you are making sure that you have components in your each science lesson from the blue, the orange, and the green area. So students are doing hands-on labs or data collection or data analysis that helps with developing skills in the engineering practices standards, the blue. And then students are being taught the vocabulary and the content, that's the orange area. And then you're weaving in those skills, like finding patterns, cause and effect, to help with analysis of information, that's in the green cross-cutting concepts area. So I have workshops that I can do on phenomena, 3D learning, all of this. So if you're listening to me and you have not had a PD session on all of this, I would highly recommend it from me or somebody else. Reach out to me and I can help point you in the right direction for that. This page, though, gives you an overview of 3D learning. If you're wondering and you just want to learn more about it on your own, that's a great resource for you. Okay, now we're going to start with the assessments, and specifically we're going to talk about the past first. So I have here for you a link to a database of past 3 through 8 grade tests. So if you're a new teacher and you haven't ever administered this test, this would be great for you to go back and look at it just to get some idea of what the test has looked like previously. And then if you're a experienced teacher, then you have lots of experience with this, I'm guessing. But you can always go back and look at the past questions at different grade levels if you're interested in that. Now, I have, pulled a specific question from the 4th grade test in June of 2021, because I'm going to compare this to a question that I think will cover the same content, but what I think the new test might look like. So this question is, the theme is ecology, and you can see that there's a picture here of an ecosystem. And students are asked to identify 2 organisms labeled in the diagram that are producers. So obviously students could identify grass or a pine tree, maybe the water plants. So really this is just look at the picture, pull off some very specific facts and write down. This is kind of memorize what producers are. If students have done that, they can answer this question. The next question, identify the source of energy for all organisms in this pond environment. Again, a one-word answer. They just have to have learned and memorized that the sun is a source of energy for all organisms. And then the last question, it says that, or the last couple of questions, the average lifespan of one type of animal is 10 years. Explain what is meant by lifespan. Again, just a vocab question, understanding and spitting back out the information. And then it does ask, describe 2 reasons why an animal might move from one area to live in another area. And I'm just going to give you some feedback on this, and I'll explain why after when I compare to the other question. But this question's not on the same page as the picture. And then I feel like this question's pretty vague, right? So why animals might move from one area to live in another. Now they're wanting students to relate this back to ecology and understand that organisms or animals are going to move to find food or to find a mate or to make sure that they have all of their needs met as far as shelter and water and all of those things. So But personally, having taught for 22 years, I feel like there's a lot of students that would look at a question like this and they would be like, oh, because they're following their friend, or because it was sunnier, or because they may not relate. The students just may not be in the correct frame of mind at that moment to relate this back to ecology. Even though that student might know the answer, they may not read this question and use that filter of ecology like they're supposed to. So that's an old test. So that's the past. We're not starting in 2024. The new test will not be in the same format. Okay, so now I want to show you a sample fifth grade assessment that is the same content, but you'll see it's very different. So this is from Delaware, and why am I using Delaware? I don't know if anybody's asking that, but if you are, I want to explain it. So I have done a lot of research for this workshop, trying to find assessment question examples of what the test is going to look like for New York State. I've attended a ton of PD sessions. I've spent days learning how to write assessment questions that would match what the tests are going to look like in 2024. But New York State hasn't released any sample questions. So I did, a lot of other states are using NGSS, which is what the New York State Science Standards are modeled after. And those states, some of the states are ahead of New York in their implementation of their new standards. So they've already released tests to students. So they're already using the new standards, and their tests are going to mirror more closely what our new tests are going to look like. So Delaware is one of those states. And so that's why you're going to see various states listed when I give you resources, because those are the ones that I've hit a lot of dead ends. You guys know how that works, right? You do research online and you need a password, or you need a username, or it's just a lot of research. So I tried to give you the best information I could, but it's not New York State. It's kind of all over the place. Okay, so this new test. So right away, you're going to see that it's quite a bit different, and there's a lot more reading. So, building those reading skills is going to be really important. And then you can see right off, we're starting with some data. So it says a group of scientists is studying organisms in an ocean ecosystem. They show you 3 pictures of the organisms they see. So we have a whale, a larva, and an algae. And right away, they're giving you a size scale, okay, and a picture. And then they're giving you 3 facts about these organisms. And the first question is about the flow of energy and matter. So it says, which statements explain what happens when right whales eat the fish larva as they swim in the ocean? Select 3 correct answers. So a lot of the new test formats that I've seen ask students to choose more than 1 correct answer. So that's going to be a shift for students potentially. I know that in other subject areas, this is not uncommon for them to choose more than 1 correct answer, but in science, as if we're looking at the past assessments, that's not how questions are typically asked. So that might be challenging for students and something they need practice with before the new assessments. Question number 2, they want students to draw arrows to show how energy flows among the sun, the fish larva, and the algae. So in the question on the old test that I just showed you, it just asked students to identify the sun as the source of energy. In this question, though, they're asking for you to, for students to show the energy going from the sun to the algae, and then from the algae to the larva. So this is more of a food chain type energy flow. And in assessments in the past, students have not had to draw arrows or draw diagrams. And so this is something I'm doing a lot with my students right now, is getting them to practice drawing diagrams and showing energy flow or movement or, inputs and outputs of a system using arrows and diagramming. That's huge on these new tests, huge. Students need to be able to draw diagrams, understand diagrams, draw movement inputs into a system and out of a system. And in this case, they're asking for energy. So this next question, they're asking students to label each arrow to show what represents what it represents by writing one of the following. So energy only, matter only, both energy and matter. And so again, they need to understand the word matter and energy, but then they need to apply that to the diagram and be able to label. And you can see there are 3 labels, but there's 4 boxes. So for some students, they're going to need practice understanding that it's not match and match, right? They're going to need to be able to think through this diagram and put labels in that make sense. And so again, I can't stress enough how much students are going to need to practice the diagramming to be prepared for these new assessments. Okay, the next question is showing global season changes in energy and matter. And so I teach 7th grade currently, and I think I know many of my 7th graders would struggle with a diagram like this. First, there's a key here showing algae being low and high. Most students do not have practice with using a key at 7th grade, so I'm guessing that, this is a 5th grade test. So these are some skills that we're going to need to start building in at the lower level so students are proficient by the time they get to 5th or 8th grade. And even high school, you're going to see a lot of diagrams like this. We already do. So we have January, June. You can see the angle of sunlight is different. So this is where teaching students to be very observant, those cross-cutting concepts, really pointing out similarities and differences between 2 diagrams. Like that's something we can start in pre-K. Just seeing, what's the same and what's different. Those skills are really going to help students because they need to be very observant and pick up on the similarities and differences between these 2 pictures. They need to be able to analyze the pictures. So this is a multiple choice question about the algae. And then the other thing I want to say, just because I keep scrolling, is that now we're on page 6 of this question, and it's a flow of the same, students need to kind of build on everything from page 1 all the way through. And these storylines or these multi-page questions are going to be a new change in these tests. It's going to be at the 5th grade, the 8th grade, and the high school level. So, if you look at the old tests, if you're a high school teacher and you've never looked at the 8th grade or 4th grade test, you should do that. Like look at the past ones. If you're a 4th grade teacher and you've never looked at the 8th or, Regents exams, you should do that. It's my suggestion just because I feel like you'll learn a lot about if you look at the patterns in the old test structure, it's going to help you realize that you're going to see those similar patterns in the new test structure. And so, even though this is a 5th grade test, my point is that, at the 8th grade and high school level, you're going to see a similar format to the new tests. Okay, so this is showing, again, they have to be able to really pick out the similarities and differences between these 4 pictures. And I think most students would look at this and it would all look the same to them, right? There are very slight differences from one picture to the next. And so they really need to be able to focus and pick that out. To be able to answer this question really well. Okay, and so you can see that they're asking some more multiple choice questions, and then they go down to showing migration of whales, and that has to do with algae availability. And then down here, this is also something new that I wanted to highlight for question 6. So that last test that I showed you for the 4th grade assessment, they were just looking for really short answers. They asked why an animal might move from one area to the next. And so in some ways, this question's a bit easier because students have all of this data to look at, right? So you're not asking students a question where I feel like this is very pointed. It's very, they've gone through all these pages now with all of this data that they can use to answer the question. So really, one of the skills students are going to need is to be able to go back and look at all the data you're given and use that to support your explanation. Where in the other test, this one, students are asked this question, but they don't have to reference anything from from the other page, right? They're given no data to reference when they answer the question. But with this question, it says, use your knowledge of energy and matter to construct an explanation of why whales are much bigger at the end of summer than when they first arrived. And then they say, support your explanation with evidence from the diagram. So they're telling students, go back, look at the diagram, and use that evidence to support your answer. And so in all subject areas now, there's a big focus on supporting a claim with evidence, right? And so personally, I know that this question looks really overwhelming, right? You're like, oh my gosh, this is a lot for fifth grade. How are they going to do this? And I feel the pressure. It seems like a lot, but honestly, from my perspective as a teacher, I feel like if we can get students to do this, if we can get our students to this level where they can look at graphs and look at data and analyze it and then make a claim and support that claim with evidence from the graphs and data and drawings that are given to them, that's science, right? That's real world science, where it's just memorize and repeat information. And so I have to say that even though this seems challenging, in all of my years of teaching, this is a change that I fully support just because I've seen the difference in my students. I've really worked to add more drawings and add more diagrams and have them analyze data. And it's just, it's skills students are going to need later in life. Like if you need to go on a trip somewhere and look at a map, you need to be able to read the key. If you want to argue your point, if you're in an argument with your husband about something and you want to prove your point, you need to state your claim and support it with evidence. So this is all just real world skills, right? And so I feel like the fact that we're moving more toward getting information and then looking at it and answering questions through analysis is a really good direction to be going. It's going to help give these students skills they need to practice science later in life. Okay. So I'm going to X that out. Sorry, I talk to myself all the time. Okay, so that was the past, and then the future of what I expect to see as far as assessment questions are concerned. If you have questions, please write them down. If you disagree with me about my perspective on the old test versus the new test, that's completely fine. Write down questions you have. I want to hear all of it. So the next couple links, I'm just going to go through quickly because I have a timer on and I'm trying to stick within, an hour, try to keep this under an hour. So the next couple links here are just different assessment examples. I pulled a few that follow a different format just to give you some other possibilities of what the new test might look like. So this is adapted from SNAP, which is a Stanford NGSS assessment project. And there is a link to this right here. I would highly recommend you look at it because they have some great stuff. The standards are all listed for you here. So that kind of gives you a frame of reference that the other question I just showed you did not. And this is giving you a different type of question. So it's still showing you pictures. It's showing you examples from a lab. There's a video for students to watch. It's just a different form of question. So it still follows the NGSS and the new standards. It follows the assessment format of what I'm expecting to see. It's just a little bit different take on it. And then it also gives you a rubric, which is really nice so that you can kind of look through this and understand what they're expecting students to do when answering these questions. Okay. All right. And then this is again, the Stanford link, that page. These are some assessment examples from Wisconsin. I'm not going to spend a ton of time because you can all click these links and look for them yourself. Look through them, sorry, not for them. And then this page, so these are just some good resources for science. If you've never seen them, I'd highly recommend checking them out. So this is exemplar lessons and resources from the New York State Science Consortium. So this website was put together by master teachers and some other people really doing a lot of work in science in New York State. So there are some lessons here. You can see they have California resources. That's one state that's ahead of us. And then I put this link because there's a lot of assessment resources here. So some of these are ones that I already put on my slideshow because I felt they were most relevant to this presentation, but there's some other things here that can be really helpful for you as well. Okay, and then the Delaware side, just more examples. This page I wanted to show you because when I found this page, it's awesome. If I had the time, this is the kind of page I would want to create because it's just really good. So explore all of this site. It has so much stuff. It's awesome. And there's videos from the creator. It's just great. So there are different grade level performance assessments, and you can click on your grade level, and then you can click on the topic, and then it's going to give you some samples. So these aren't specifically this topic question. These are just the SNAP assessments. It's the same example over and over, which was kind of a bummer. But the thing that's cool is they give you, the creator has made some assessments that match the standard. And then, so here's a SNAP one that matches the standard, which is really nice. It gives you the reading and then the information. And then it gives you some mini lessons with videos. It gives you a whole bunch of links. And then it also gives you some anchor charts. This is at the elementary level. It gives you phenomena that match the standard. And then there's some instructional videos or information from the creator. There's learning plans, storylines. There's so much stuff in here. Math links, ELA links. This is just an awesome website with so much information for you as far as assessments are concerned. This next site, Edulastic, I don't want to click on it and waste more time, but this would be more for middle or high school level. I found this, it's like a quizzes or Castle Learning. It's a database of questions, but you get to pick this. The cool thing is you can pick your standard set, New York State, and then you can pick the specific standard you're teaching, and it will give you questions linked to that. So it is awesome. The one thing I'll say is that there's a lot of questions in there that are like past, the past of assessments. And so you kind of have to go through and weed out those types of questions and find the ones that are more in line with the new assessment format. But it's still a really cool resource. It's not super user friendly. It took me a while to figure out how to use it, but once I did, it's definitely worth it. Okay, so for your task, I've given you lots of information and I'm hoping you'll explore some of those websites, but your task after this workshop and before meeting with me is to create 5 questions. So you can write 5 questions that you think match the new format, that have data, that have diagramming, that have charts or information for students to pull from to answer the questions. That's kind of the most time-consuming task. Or you can search for 5 assessment questions that match a unit that you teach that you feel are a good example of. So you can use all of these resources I gave you and pull 5 questions that you feel like you could use in your classroom with the content that you teach. Or you can rewrite a question. So I use mystery science as an example here because I know a lot of teachers in my district use mystery science. So this is a 2nd grade unit, and it's on the work of water. So it's erosion, weathering, earth science content. And I know that Mystery Science is in the process of redoing some of their assessments, but this one is definitely not in line with what students are going to see on the new test. So if you use Mystery Science, it would be great for you to take one of the units that you use and rewrite the questions to match the new format. So this one, it starts out with a question that says, if it never rained, do you think the world would look different? Explain. Okay, so again, super vague. I would, students would be like, it'd be great if it never rained. It'd be warm all the time and I could go to the beach. And I can totally see students giving me that answer, right? Because it's a really vague question without anything to help kind of guide student thinking and help them understand what they're supposed to be referencing for their answer. So, a better way to ask this question, because what they're trying to get at is, how that the unit is about weathering and erosion. So they're asking how, rock structures or sand or dirt, or how would all of that look different if it didn't rain? So, if you've been doing this whole unit, then students may know to answer that way. But when you're taking a test in June and students haven't had this content since, September, their brain may not go there. So it'd be better to give them pictures maybe of different amounts of erosion, and then ask students to match those pictures with graphs that are showing rain amount in different areas, or a picture of it being really rainy versus really sunny, and having them match those, because this is second grade. So match those pictures together. Okay. Or look at data and ask them which location would have the most erosion, if you feel that your students are able to meet that challenge of that level of question. This next question is giving a black and white photo, and it's asking students to show where mountains would be located. And it does say that there are two rivers on the map, but again, there's no key with this diagram, okay? It's in black and white. So although it says ocean, this is second grade, right? So many students may not be able to read that word, or may not associate that with ocean when they see it on the paper. So, coloring this in blue, making the land look more like land. And then, some students may think these are roads, or I don't even know, like second grade teachers, you may have a better idea of what students might guess this is, but it's definitely not obvious that this is the river. So a much better diagram, much more realistic, and then showing grade, even topographic lines on this map. That's something students in second grade could understand with instruction. So, giving a better diagram and then giving data, and weaving that into a storyline with a full question, rather than just it being kind of isolated. And then, I don't want to take too much more time, but as you read through these, you can understand how they're really lacking in data, and they're not asking them to analyze anything or make a claim and support that claim with evidence. They're saying why, and that's common, right? Is just to ask why. But if you ask students to use evidence to support their answer, that's a better way of wording it, just because that's what you're going to be seeing on the new assessments. Okay, so... And I love mystery science. I'm not bashing mystery science at all. I'm just saying the assessments are kind of a weak point in mystery science. So you may want to look through those and rewrite those questions. So you can either write 5 questions on your own, you can research 5 questions that would be relevant in your classroom, or you can rewrite 5 questions from content like mystery science and turn those into me. Now I created this. It's not professional at all. This is just something that, and I can never get this link to work. There we go. Okay. Okay, so this is something I threw together really quickly because I had a lot of questions, and personally, I've had questions from teachers, and then when I learn new information, or I'm trying to visualize how this works in my classroom with my specific content, it helps for me to have examples that are specific to what I'm teaching. And we've heard a lot, I know in the other subjects, claim, evidence, and reasoning is big. And so I kind of linked this to that. So we have claim, evidence, and explain your reasoning. So the explain your reasoning part really would be kind of like support, your claim with evidence. So either way you word it, you want to make sure students are supporting their claim with evidence as much as possible. And in other subjects, it might be more just explain your reasoning. Okay, so these are some activities that I would consider kind of a level 1, where we're at with students when they are able to do the basics. So if we're looking at more of a rubric, right, we're trying to get students over to a level 3, but at a level 1, they're still understanding information. It's just they haven't reached the final goal yet. So making or stating observations, collecting or reporting data, create, make, read a model or a diagram. So These are just some basic skills, and these are some activities that would allow students to do level 1. And these are all skills we want students to do, right? We want them to do hands-on activities and be able to do these parts. I personally, though, find that especially if you're pressed for time, sometimes it stops here. They do the hands-on, they do the field trip, they wonder, they ask questions, but then we don't really move further than that. And so I personally have really worked to push my instruction to level 2 and 3 with it, most activities that I do, just to try to get students to that higher level of thinking so that they're better prepared for these new assessments. And like I said, it's not just about the assessments. I do want to, even though this whole workshop's about assessments, I personally don't agree with only teaching to the test. The assessments are important. It kind of gives us a goal for what students are supposed to be able to do and understand. But really, our goal is to prepare students for life, and helping them to have skills that they can use to be scientists is really my goal. Any student that goes into a science field, that's awesome. So these are skills that if we're able to weave these in will help them be successful, not just on assessments. So 2, support the claim with evidence. So these would be some activities that would help them move to that level. And then 3, you can see, you can read through that yourself. And then this is all great, but me, like I said, I kind of need sometimes someone to give me more specific examples. So I picked a topic. I picked impacts of angle of light on seasons, day, night, etc., because this is a topic that it gets weaved in all the way up through the grade levels. So it's a topic that most of you might have experience with or teach. So making a claim, these are some of the actual things that students would do. Supporting the claim with evidence, explain your reasoning, or, oh, I just realized I put this twice. Supporting your claim with evidence is twice. I don't know why I typed it in there. Just ignore that. So supporting claim with evidence and then explain your reasoning. I'm sorry. It's late. It's like, Sunday night. All right. So, these are the activities that students would do to explain their reasoning, go a level beyond just stating their claim. That's my timer to tell me I'm getting close to where I need to stop. All right, so hopefully that helps you. And then the other thing that I did here is a lesson plan screening tool. So, and then the assessment question screening tool. This would be more for the second video, but down here on the bottom, the assessment question screening tool. So sometimes it's like listening to what I'm saying is one thing, but then actually picking a question that you're like, yes, this definitely meets all the criteria to be a good example for students to use to prepare for the new assessments. That's another thing. So, one thing you could do is use this tool on the bottom, and you would type in the parts of the question that ask students to do these things. So what part of the question asks students to make a claim? So like identify a producer. That was on that old style test, or that's making a claim. Telling me that something's a producer. Supporting the claim with evidence, okay? Like support, the reasons why the organism is a producer. Explain your reasoning, okay? So type in the different parts of the question that ask students to reach those higher order levels of thinking. So like level 3 in that question I showed you would be the paragraph students have to write, where they pull information off the graph about why whales migrated. And so for each question, you could kind of break it down, and hopefully that will help you to understand a little bit better if the question matches what students are expected to do on these new tests. If you don't want to use that, by all means, just ignore this page completely. It's just some people need guidance like that, like I do, and some people get it just from me explaining it. Okay, so I think that's pretty much it for this first session. Like I said, the second video, the second workshop, we're going to get more into unit planning and how to really use phenomena and 3D learning to make sure students are prepared for the new test. One thing I do want to point out, though, before I end the video is that if you click this link here, It will take you to the FEH BOCES community, online community. So it's kind of like like a, I don't know, like a social, like a LinkedIn or a social media style stream with posts. And I add a lot to that science PLC. So when you first request to join, it's just going to pop up as the BOCES page. And then as you explore, here, let me go there really quick. Sorry. It's just easier for you to see than me trying to explain it in the air. All right. So when you hit request to join, it's going to just take you to the main page. But then once you get to the main page, you will be able to see the PLCs on the left. Okay, I just want you to see this because I don't want you to get lost and not be able to find what I'm talking about. Okay, so over here on the left, you can see PLCs, and when you click on that, it will take you to the different subject areas. And the science teacher one is right here. When you click on that, it gives you different posts. So I've shared last year when we were virtual, I was looking at a lot of videos to use for phenomena. And then you can see that I've posted lots of different information here. So after I go to the workshop in May, when I receive updates from the state, I will post it in that PLC so that you have access to the most recent information. Okay, so hopefully this last 45 minutes was really useful for you, or almost an hour, I guess. Please reach out to me if you have questions through phone, through email. If you are not a classroom teacher and you feel that writing these 5 questions or researching them is not going to be a valuable use of your time, please reach out to me and you can do something different to earn the credits for this. I've had some IT specialists who created some resource pages for me instead of finding 5 questions for their classroom. So I can adjust this task so that it's relevant for you. I'm happy to do that. So have a great day, night, whatever it is when you're watching this, and I look forward to meeting you in our video session.